Okay, this is Bo's roadmap to success. Now, as you'll notice, we don't have Bo in the shot here. Bo is basically, I wouldn't consider him an aggressive dog. Now, he definitely is a reactive dog. And from talking with the guardians and spending an extensive period of time really going over his day-to-day routine and behavior, I think that since all of these aggressive acts have come when he is with his guardians, and it's either in the domicile or in his area. But they go to the dog park, and the dog can come up to people. They go to a gun club, and gunshots are being done, and people come up and take pictures with the dog. I think the dog thinks he's on duty, and I think that a lack of rules and structure have confused the dog into thinking that he needs to be in charge of and protect or be possessive of his guardians. And the great thing is this is an entirely treatable condition, and it's really a result of the humans not providing those rules and structure, which is a very common mistake that a lot of my clients do. It's one of the first questions I ask my clients. Now, in this case, because he is definitely a higher energy bloodhound, we talked about energy and exercise, and I don't think that he was getting the exercise that he needs. An average dog needs 45 minutes of constructive exercise a day. Bo was not getting that, and so just being aware of that and upping his exercise, especially early in the day, will go a long ways towards helping put him in a position to succeed. Now, the things the guardians can do to help with this, we can use a doggy backpack. The added weight can help the dog feel more. First of all, it's doing a job, so it's a little bit more focused, and the added weight actually makes the activity a little bit more strenuous. Now, we're doing this, when you get a dog backpack, don't get a super duper expensive, and don't get a cheap one. They will fall apart, and eventually you'll have to buy another one anyways. So what we want to do is just, when we're walking him, get him used to wearing it. Have him wear it in the house. Get a couple 2-liter bottles or whatever it is we're going to put in to get him to get used to the weight and the sensation of it on him. Okay, let me see. Upping his exercise is going to go a long ways towards helping him, put him in a position to listen, but it's really going to be the humans in this case, because I think it's the lack of rules and structure. Because dogs are all about what they see us do, it's going to be important for the guardians to act like leaders through their actions. So my philosophy is I want dogs to identify to humans like children do to parents. I'm a member of the group, I have a voice, I have a vote, I just don't have the final vote. And I also don't have that burden of responsibility. If we feel like our child is engaging in high-risk behavior, we tend to be more proactive in terms of protecting them, and I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here with Bo. So we need the guardians to start incorporating rules and consistently enforcing them. So some of the rules we talked about is rule number 1, not being allowed on the furniture. He doesn't get really on this couch, although he's chewed a lot of it. But there are a couple of couches and piece of furniture he's allowed on. For dogs, the higher they sit, the higher their social rank is. So we want the dog to identify as not having the same rank as the humans. So I would make all the furniture off limits for 30 days or as long as these problems are still going on, and then only with an invitation and only for good behavior after that point, because this is a privilege, not a right. So if we get past the point where the dog is allowed on the furniture again, when we invite the dog up, he needs to get invitation number 1, and then if he starts barking, he has to get down. Or if he gets down to go to a drink of water, he would need an invitation to get back up again. Now, if the dog gets up without our permission, I'm going to turn and I'm going to say off once. Say it like you mean it. If the dog doesn't get off, what I would do is I either push or pull. In his case, I'd probably grab him by the collar and firmly, but not aggressively, pull him to the edge so he feels like he's about to fall off. Dogs don't like an unstable setting, but I always want the dog to do the work. The unstable setting will cause the dog to get down. As soon as he gets off the couch, we want to put things in context. So as soon as he gets off, pet him under his chin and say the word off. Because this is essentially a demotion when we take it away from him. But this way we get at least a little bit of reward, and we're creating a vocabulary. And in the future, when we say off, he knows what that means because we put it in context for him. Now, while we're doing the dog bed, I always no dogs in the furniture. I always like to give the dog a dog bed. I like to position it under the TV. What I do is I take a treat and I toss it on the dog bed. The dog bed itself I prefer the ones that are foam instead of like the duvet covers, because they have like right here, there are wrinkles on the couch. A treat might hide behind one of those. Also, dogs are colorblind, so get a light-colored one. I like a light cream or a white color one. And I like the ones that are foam, so I can unzip the shell and wash it if the dog gets it dirty. So what I do is I toss the treat onto the dog bed, let the dog see me do it. As soon as he goes over, when he licks it up off the dog bed, I say whatever the command word is. Come up with a fun command: beach, palace, Mexico, Cabo, whatever you want to say. So I toss about 10 or 12 treats over there. Make sure he goes off the couch, and then toss another one. And say the word after it goes into his mouth. Anytime you use a treat, the dog should hear the word after, immediately after it goes in their mouth. So that's the first way I do it. The second way I do it is when the dog's in the next room, I leave a treat there, and this is why I like a light color. So if there's a treat there, he can see the treat. Don't point it out. Let him find it on his own. You'll see him come in the room sniffing if you use a high-value meat treat. And when he goes over, when he touches it, they say, beach. So every time he goes over there and he's on the dog bed, he gets a treat, which makes it positive. And then every time that he gets the treat, he hears the word, whatever the word is that you assign to it. After enough repetition, you'll be able to say beach, and he'll go over there anticipating getting it. The third way I do it is I let the dog see me I have a treat, I walk him over, put him into a sit, then I pop the treat in his mouth and say the word beach, or put him into a down position and pop it in his mouth and say beach, or whatever the word is. So make sure we get a dog bed so he has a designated place to go. Let me see. I see the St. Bernard. All right. So let's see. Other rules we talked about is not being allowed within 7 feet of anyone's eating. For dogs to be within 7 feet is a way of challenging for that. So when the humans are eating food here, my rule would be the dog's not allowed to cross the line that goes from here or there. This whole area in front is no dog zone, only when people are eating food here. When people are not eating the food, then he can come and go as he pleases. Same thing with the kitchen. Another rule, he's not allowed to be in the kitchen when we're preparing food. The rest of the time he can be in there. We're going to use the escalating consequences, which in the video above, to move towards him, to back him out of it. And you're going to do back and forth at first. Remember to stop between steps when you're moving backwards. Okay, let me see. Another rule would be the dog has to sit before it goes in or out of the door. We put a lot of emphasis on manding in this session, which is asking your dog to sit to ask for things. And so if I go to the door and say sit, and he doesn't sit, the more I repeat the command, the less we mean it. So if I go to the door and I say sit, tell him, don't ask him, sit. If he doesn't sit, turn and walk away. Now we're controlling the resource. He wants to go out for a walk. Well, if you want to go out for a walk, we're doing it my way, my rules, and my rule requires you to sit. So if he doesn't sit, I walk away, sit down, turn on the TV, play a video game, watch check an email. After 1 minute, go back to the door and tell him to sit again. If he doesn't sit, this time we'll walk away for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, next time for 8 minutes. Keep on doing that until he sits down. As soon as his butt hits the floor, boom, we open that door. After a while, the association will be made, and he will start going and sitting at the door as his way of asking to go outside. Let me see, other rules that we went over. Not jumping is just a behavior we don't want to avoid, and I went through a trick that I won't share on camera, but I went over a trick with the guardians. If everyone in the house does this, within a couple of days, it should eliminate that behavior. Now, he does like to pick up a lot of clothing items, and it's pretty easy to figure out where he got this idea because the guardians had given him rags and old clothes and stuff to chew on. Well, he can't tell the difference between a rag and the new jeans that you just bought. So I went through and we went over the importance of dog toys. Go to doggoneproblems.com. On the right side, if you're looking on a computer, it'll say Quest Ed. Click that. Look for the one that says feeding your dog can increase your dog's intelligence. My puppy Quest will be eating out of a yellow and teal colored star, it looks like. At the bottom of that, I have some treat dispensing toys that I'll go over in a second here. But we want to get him used to or eating out of or stop chewing on inappropriate items. So we're not getting him plastic bottles or hats or anything else that's old or old shoes because he can't tell the difference. We're going to remove all that stuff and don't give him access to it. So make sure we're picking the clothes up off the floor of any room that he goes into so he doesn't have access to it for at least 30 days to start establishing a new behavior pattern. Let me see. And then we want to teach him to drop. So when he has, if he does take some jeans or something he's not allowed to have, if we go over and try to chase him, that's a game for him. If we pull it away from him, we're using force, and it's also a game for him. So what I do is I would get a low-value item, something that he is allowed to have at any time that is not particularly enticing to him. Something he enjoys, but that's not privileged. Then what I do is I take one of these high-value tricky trainer treats, hold it in front of his nose. Don't say a command, wait for him to drop it. At first he's going to try to take it with the stuff in his mouth. Wait for him to drop. As soon as he drops, pop it in his mouth and say the word drop after it goes into his mouth. And then walk away. He gets the original item back. So if you practice this, and only do it when he has stuff in his mouth, not when he's holding it or chewing on it. Eventually it gets to the point where when you say drop, he drops anything because he's been conditioned that dropping means I'm going to get something better. Now if he does have something he's not allowed to have, some food, some clothing or a shoe or something, we don't want to take it from him. What we're going to do is first shape this behavior. Then we go over and we say drop. When he drops it, then we pop the treat in his mouth, and then I would pull out of my pocket like a chicken's foot, a trachea, a cod skin, a bully stick, an edible, ingestible, higher value item. So we're trading. Yes, you don't get the shoe back, but you get a bully stick. And he would be very happy to chew on that bully stick. When we practice that with low value items to the point where you say drop and he's spitting anything out of his mouth without any hesitation. Let me see. We went over petting with a purpose and passive training. And those were things that a lot of my clients discard because they are so simple, but extremely effective because they are repeated a lot. So petting with a purpose, just remember, we're not going to pet him anymore unless he does something to earn it first. And we're certainly not going to pet him when he nudges or scratches or jumps up on us, because that's rewarding that behavior. Anything your dog's doing when you pet it is what you're reinforcing. So if he comes over and he nudges me, I'm going to tell him to sit. When he sits, I'm going to pet him under his chin in a scratching motion like this and say the word sit. I prefer to pet under the chin because we want the dog to have its nose elevated when we're doing desired actions and behaviors like this, because that's what we're rewarding him. We want him to feel good about things like this. Like I said earlier, sitting is a more subordinate position. So we condition him. After a while, by doing this, the dog will come and sit and prepay for attention by sitting in front of the human. And we've taught him a new behavior. If you want attention from the human, you sit politely in front of them, and then the human will pet you. So when he does start transitioning to that, make sure we reach over and pet him and say just the word sit. Not good boy, not Bo, not good sit, just sit. And not sit, sit. Say it consistently. Dogs hear pronunciation. That's petting with a purpose. Passive, and if we come in the room and we see somebody's petting the dog and the dog is standing, we say paycheck. That means I think you might have forgotten to pet with a purpose. That person should stop petting the dog, tell it to sit again, gives us another practice to sit, even if he was doing it right the first time. And then we pet the dog on the chin. We could say, actually, I asked him to sit before when you flushed the toilet, he stood up and I continued petting him. David said that's allowed. You can pet him as much as you want. He just has to change his state first or prepay for it. But after he does either one of those things, you can pet him for hours if you want to after that. All right, the other thing I went over was reinforcing positive behaviors, which is what I like to call passive training. So it's just simply acknowledging the dog when it does things that we like, that we want to be a command. So every time the dog comes to me, I'm going to pet it and say, come. Every time he sits down next to me, within 3 seconds, I'm going to pet him and say, sit. Every time he lays down, I say, crash. Come up with fun command words if you can, especially when you have a dog that's got some anxiety. Coming up with fun command words makes everyone feel a little bit better. So as soon as the dog lays down next to me, reach over and pet him and say crash, or whatever the word is. Now if his butt is here, his head is there, I don't have to go like this and scratch him under his chin. I can scratch his butt too. We just want to avoid patting him on top of the head. You can caress and you can scratch, do not pat. Also, we want to avoid people leaning over him. That's caused a problem that precipitated this session. So for dogs, front-facing is confrontational, sideways is approachable. As I mentioned in the very first video at the top of this, turning sideways can also be a way of being less confrontational to the dog and lowering yourself. Now, we want him to be sub-threshold, which means not reactive. So if he starts reacting to somebody, the best thing we can do is increase the distance between, and sometimes we'll have to move him out of sight. He was fine until I came into his sight. Dogs should meet by scent, and he is most certainly a scent dog. He should be my smell first, not by sight. And so again, I think when people come into the home, he thinks he's on duty. I don't know you, and so I'm going to have to let you know that I'm in charge. I'm going to bark at you and let you know that there is a sheriff around here, because he thinks his guardians are kind of too casual because they aren't enforcing rules, and they're petting him whenever he wants. The more that we start making him earn those pets, the more, and petting him to reward him for desired actions, the more he's going to seek out those behaviors. So I like to use the word paycheck, which means I suspect you're petting without a purpose. Vocabulary means I'm guessing that you're saying the wrong version of the command word. Most of us come up with a whole bunch of versions of each word. Come here, over here boy, whistle, tap my thigh, dog's name, and a nickname. Now the dog has to listen for way too many words. It's easier for us all to say come. So if somebody in the house is saying come here, and the word is come, we say, vocabulary, and the person goes, come. And maybe come up with a list of what the command words are so we're all saying the same thing. Also, don't repeat a word over and over. The more we repeat it, the less we mean it. So if the dog comes in and we're saying the wrong thing, then we're going to say rerun or repeat, and that means you're saying it multiple times. So we want to only say it once and then make it happen. Now, I like to use my hand in this sort of motion to put a dog into a sit. So if this is the dog's nose and this is his eyes, what I do is I hold my hand slightly above their head, and I have these high-value treats, something that's got a strong scent. What I do is I don't go just vertically up and I don't go over the dog's head. I go in an arc. And this causes the dog to track it, and to get more elevation, eventually they have to put their butt down. As soon as the butt hits the ground, I lower it, and they tilt their head down. I let them lick the treat up, and then I start tickling them under the chin. And this is just a good habit to get into. This way, every time you are giving your dog a treat, you're going like this. You can put your dog into a sit by doing that motion, by going over the head. I only do that to put him in a sit. And then eventually, if he's not listening to you, you can actually pretend to go like this, and he'll see that hand, it looks like you have something, he'll run right over expecting to get a trick or a treat. But rewarding him with either attention, affection, or these high-value training treats, and assigning a command word within that 3-second window after it goes in his mouth is going to help him develop a positive association. And again, then he's going to be more inclined to sit. Even though he knows how to sit, sitting here is not as challenging as sitting outside when there's people nearby, or in the stairs, or at the dog park. So the more we practice in different connotations, the easier it is for him in more challenging situations. Let me see, what else? That's passive training, depending on the purpose. We're doing a little filming, buddy. Go ahead, you can go ahead. Not a big deal. So let me see, what else? For the kennel, we want to block the dog from engaging in bad habits. And basically, he's been left here free when the guardians are gone. Now, for kennel, sometimes dogs should not be in the kennel for longer than 4 hours unsupervised, or at all, because it creates more tension. Now, there are videos on my website. If you have problems with the kennel when you start putting him in the kennel when you leave, let me know. Make sure you message me sooner rather than later. I have a video I can send you that'll show you how to make sure he's comfortable with the kennel. He likes the kennel right now, but right now the door is always open. They're not putting him in there. When they start closing the kennel, that may change his perception of it. So if that's the case, let me know and I can go over some stuff with you. Also, the guardians were free feeding him, and feeding is a very important activity for dogs. So what I'd like the guardians to do, again, go to Quest to Ed and go to that post that I mentioned, referenced a little bit earlier in this video, about feeding him. At the bottom of that, there's some links to getting toys, treat dispensing toys. So get 3 or 4 different ones. I have one that's a dumbbell, one that's a golf ball, or it looks like an oversized golf ball, one that's a puzzle. But you want him to think about it in different ways. This stimulates him mentally, number 1. Number 2, he has to earn his food. He has to work for it. He has to nudge the ball until the kibble comes out. So what I would do is start feeding him out of these things. This way, toys are much more appealing to the dog than chewing on the couch, because the couch doesn't distribute food where toys do. Now, before we feed him, the human should eat something first. If you're not going to eat a real meal, just eat a chip or cracker in 5 or more bites. Then give the dog permission to eat. I give the dog, now when he goes to a bowl, if you want to give him assign a command word, I would do the treat feeding him out of toys for about 2 months. And make sure you don't leave that toy around. Watch him while he's eating. As soon as he's done, walks away from the toys, pick him up and put him up somewhere where he can't get to him. Otherwise, he'll tear him into him to get to where the smell's coming from. Let me see. And if you're going to eat a real meal later, that's okay. Just eat a couple of chips or a bite first. And if he doesn't want to eat, don't over encourage him. Just put the food up, and he doesn't eat again until the next meal. Let me think. What else? We don't want to let him pulling. I'm going to try, if I forget to put the videos about teaching him to walk with a heel, not to pull on a leash and the heel, message me and I can send you links. They should be above, if my memory is working, should be above this write-up embedded with links to some training videos that I've used to great success that I've found from other trainers on YouTube. Am I forgetting anything?
Tricks.
Tricks, yes, thank you. So there are 5 people in the house. What I'd like to have each person teaching him a new trick or command each week for the next 4 months. So it's my time on Sunday, I go to YouTube, look for easy dog tricks. Don't make them hard ones. You want to make progress. And I wouldn't do anything that involves him putting his paws on you because he's already jumping up. So teaching him to balance a treat on his nose is a hard one, but that develops self-control. Teaching him to stay also develops self-control. Delaying gratification in general is a good idea for dogs because they learn just because I want something doesn't mean I can have it. I have to wait and I have to look to the humans for leadership for it. So if it's my trick, maybe I'm going to teach him to roll over. So I teach him to roll over. And if you go to YouTube and the technique that you're watching doesn't work, find another technique. There are always different ways to teach a command. And then once I've taught the dog to do that, it might take me a day or two, then I'm going to tell everybody else in the family, and all week long we're going to practice and really, really practice and get that, really develop that skill set. Then the next week, my brother's going to take over, and he's going to teach the dog. And then we're going to do this, and we're going to keep just a rotation. So at the end of 4 months, the dog should have 16 new tricks or commands. Dogs have self-esteem just like humans do. The more tricks and commands they know, the better the self-esteem is. And I'd like it, one of the tricks that each person teaches should be something that requires the dog to exhibit a little bit of self-control, like balancing a treat on their nose. The leave-it exercise is a real simple one, and that's something that you guys should work on as well. Teaches them just because I want something doesn't mean I can have it. So the way we teach it is we put a treat in our hand, and we have a very loose hand, and we put it right in front of the dog's nose. He'll try to molest your hand, trying to get it and paw at it. As soon as he backs away, we give him the treat. So we're teaching him, if you try to take from the human, nothing happens. We will always outlast you. As soon as you surrender, you get rewarded. And then we're going to gradually increase the length of time that he has to wait after surrendering to build up that self-control. Let me think, what else? That I think will really help because it's going to help engender a feeling of respect to the humans. But the petting with a purpose and passive training are some of the easiest things we're going to do because they're going to be just something that we're going to repeat over and over and over again. The muzzle we went over, I'm going to go over this real quick again. The Guardians are already using the muzzle, but if we only put the muzzle on when I put the dog in stressful situations, eventually this creates a bit of a negative association. So what I do the first day is I take a piece of roast beef, lay it over the side, so it's half in, half out. And if you have a dog that is going to be working out or doing things, it needs to be a muzzle like this. There's another muzzle called a snap muzzle that you do not want to use for a dog that's reactive because they can't open their mouth and let water evaporate and they can overheat. This looks worse, but this is healthier for the dog. So I hold it upside down and I put a piece of roast beef over it, let the dog come over, take it, and walk away and chew the roast beef. Do that about 15 times throughout the day, sprinkled throughout the day. Second day I do it is I lay the roast beef where it's all inside. And so I have to hold a little bit of an angle. He comes over and gets it. And once he sticks his nose in there, then I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it up over his nose and take it down about that speed. The first time it should only, as soon as it's on, it comes off. We're not attaching it. And then throughout the day, each time we do this, next time we might do it for 2 seconds and then for 4 seconds. We're gradually going to do a longer period of time. The third day when we do it, we're going to actually start attaching it. The first time I attach it and then immediately detach it. So it's only on for a second. And then peanut butter. I'm just kidding. And then we're going to gradually throughout the day, we're going to make it longer and longer and longer. And so he's practiced having this on and being comfortable with it on. Now, the other thing we also want to do is also want to have him wearing this in non-threatening situations. He should wear this at home at times. Not all the time, but at times so that he doesn't associate. When this comes on, that means a guest is coming through the door. So and we want him to wear it when he's in a nice, relaxed piece of type of mind or place of mind, which is going to happen when you guys are just chilling out. So and don't let him paw at it. You know, you might have to use a treat or things like that. But eventually, he just gets used to it, and that's just that's the way we roll. But then when we have a guest come over, when we get to the point where we're doing rehabilitation for that, and the dog's wearing this, the guest feels more comfortable knowing that the dog can't actually bite me. The humans feel more comfortable, his guardians, knowing that he can't do that. And the dog eventually figures out he can't do that as well. And so that kind of helps him shift his behavior down a little bit. But in this case, since all of the aggression really only is isolated to when the guardians are present, I think that it's really just a lack of the dog having respect for them as leaders and not seeing them act as leaders. So the more that we can help by enforcing these rules consistently, delaying gratification, and making the dog wait for different things, the more he's going to see them as authority figures, and then we're going to take that feeling of responsibility off his shoulders. Just like us, we have dogs have stress when they feel responsible, especially if he thinks he's telling the humans what to do and the humans aren't listening. That makes him more riled up. So we want to make sure that he's nice and relaxed. And again, sub-threshold. If you're out on a walk and somebody approaches you, get one of those yellow ribbons, like I mentioned, and tie it in a big bow in the middle of the leash. If somebody comes up and asks you, can I pet your dog, or what's the yellow bow for? He had a bad experience, and now he's a little bit nippy to people he doesn't know. We just put that up there so people know to give us some space. Most people will do that. The other thing you might want to do is get a training leash. Sometimes, can I pet your dog? Oh, we're training. Most people are very respectful and they just go ahead and walk on by. We don't want him to practice doing these things. Dogs get better at anything they do, including aggression. Again, I think that he's reacting out of a fearful and an insecure place. I don't think it is an aggressive place. Now, the guardians are going to spend a month or so working on these things, and they're going to follow up with me to let me know what their progress is. When I work with a lot of people that have dogs that have problems, they're awfully sheepish, they're a little bit embarrassed to admit it. And the great thing about these guardians is they really are hitting this headstrong. They know that there's an issue. They know that they're partially contributed to it. And the great thing, like I said, dogs live in the now. Once they start changing their behavior, the dog will start following suit. And eventually, when he no longer feels like he is a leader, he's in that follower's mindset, he will no longer think it's appropriate for him to do that. He'll look to the humans to do this. Now, a couple other housekeeping things. Make sure you always outlast your dog. If you tell him to sit, he goes over and grabs a bone and lays it on the floor, get up and walk towards him casually, not aggressively. Don't say sit multiple times. When he gets up and walks away, if he walks around something, move the chairs so he can't go around, sit multiple times. If he goes into a bedroom, close the door behind you. Eventually, he's going to find himself with nowhere else to go. Then tell him to sit. As soon as he sits, we walk away. He has to understand that when the humans ask him to do something, it's no longer optional. The human is willing to stop what they're doing and get their way. And the more that we do this, after a while, he'll start doing things faster and faster because he realizes the humans are willing to burn dinner to make sure that I sit or do whatever it is they want to do. Always following through And then the other dirty secrets I found with dog behavior is trying to disagree with them before they get in trouble, and that's the hiss for the escalating consequence. So if possible, if there's something he does wrong, once you've taught him to leave an exercise, that would be, once you've taught him that, then that'd be a great time to pull out a sneaker or something like that, put it on the floor. And if he ignores it, then we get to go over and reward him for doing the behaviors that we want. Most people I find don't actually teach the dog how they want it to behave. They get very pissed off when the dog does what they haven't taught it. If we send our kids to school and the teacher doesn't teach them something and they fail in tests, we wouldn't be mad at our kids, we'd be mad at the instructor. So it's our responsibility to make sure we teach the dog, because they're living in our world, how we expect them to behave. Now that the guardians have the knowledge on how to start providing that rule and structure and discipline, I don't mean in punishment, I mean in structure, the dog will start to gravitate more towards a follower mindset and then start saying, I have to ask for attention, I have to prepay for attention, I have to sit at the door, I have to sit before I get anything, and I have to take a follower's role. We're going to take that responsibility off his shoulders, help him feel relaxed, and then he can just go back to chasing balls and get as much peanut butter off the spoon as he possibly can. All right, this is Bo's Roadmap to Success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.